Coming to the large intestine, this large intestine is around 1.5 meters length. It starts from cecum, then continues as ascending colon, then right colon, hepatic flexure, that's what we call it as right colic flexure, then transverse colon, then left colic flexure, or called as splenic flexure, then descending colon, then sigmoid colon, rectum, anal canal, and the anus. Okay, so now this is what we are going to see. Before that, we will start with the appendix. Okay, I would have told already about the ileocecal wall. I have already explained about the ileocecal wall, which is present here, and this is the cecum part. This part is called as the cecum. Let me remove part of the cecum here. So if you see, this cecum is and the appendix is present in the right iliac fossa. The small finger-like projection is called as the appendix. This small finger-like projection is called as the appendix, and this appendix, it is having lot of lymphatic tissue. It gives place for maturation of lymphocyte cells, and this study says that the appendix is a vestigial organ. That means organ of no use, but some study also says that the appendix is present to kill the kill the bacteria that is present in the cecum. Okay, so this appendix is supplied by one single appendicular artery. So inflammation of this appendix is called as appendicitis. Okay, so that time there will be pain in the right iliac fossa, and McBrune's sign will be positive. McBrune's sign is just place the finger in the right iliac fossa, place the finger in the right, press the right iliac fossa and remove fast. There will be severe amount of exaggeration of pain. That's what we call it as McBrune's sign. That's what we call it as McBrune's sign. So this appendix is a vestigial organ and it can be removed. Removal of appendix is called as appendectomy. Nowadays the laparoscopic removal is famous. They just make a keyhole and the appendix is removed. Keyhole and appendix is removed. Okay, now this appendix is connected to a junction called cecum. Okay, this appendix is connected to a junction called cecum. This cecum continues as a ascending colon. This continues as a ascending colon, and near the liver it bends. That's what it's called as hepatic flexure. Okay, it's called as hepatic flexure. So you can see here, this is called as this band-like structure is called as a tinea coli. This band-like structure is called as the tinea coli. This tinea coli is nothing but condensed part of the muscular layer of the large intestine. Okay, that's what we call it as tinea coli. Okay, so apart from this is bending in under the liver. That's why it's called hepatic flexure. This transverse colon, it comes all the way up to the umbilical region and then it goes up. Okay, that's why the transverse colon is hanging up to the umbilicus and it goes up, and by this part, by this junction, this junction is the medial 2/3 of transverse colon, and this junction is, this part is lateral 1/3 of transverse colon. Up to this medial 2/3, the midgut is supplied by superior mesenteric artery, whereas from this point till the anus it is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. It is supplied by inferior mesenteric artery. Okay, it is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. So this is what you have to know. So this in the left side, this transverse colon comes and bends. We call it as a splenic flexure because the spleen is located here. Okay, so it comes or descends all the way down. That's why it's called as a descending colon, and then it comes and takes the shape of a sigma. Okay, I will hide this ileum. It takes the shape as a sigma. That's why it's called a sigmoid colon and ends in the rectum okay, which is a muscular pouch, which is a strong muscular organ. We will discuss about that. So coming here, as I told you, it's around 1.5 meters length. The whole large intestine is around 1.5 meter length. So main function is to reabsorb the remaining water from the ingestible remains, store temporarily the residue still being eliminated. So what happens, the fecal matter is stored in the large intestine and absorbs the metabolic products by normal flora in large intestine. What do you mean by normal flora? There are many bacteria that is surviving in the GI tract. Okay, these bacteria are helpful in producing the vitamin B12, the riboflavin vitamin. Okay, if the level of the bacteria goes high, or if the toxic bacteria invades, then it leads to loose motion. Okay, so this bacterial invasion, normal bacterial flora is always essential. So that's why for some children's, when the children is having diarrhea, what happens, the bacterial mucus, everything comes out. So artificially we give lactobacillus powder. This bacillus powder, when we drop the powder in warm water, those bacteria gets activated and we make the child to drink, and that creates a normal flora, okay, in the intestine. So this normal flora is very essential to not lubricate the fecal matter also. Okay, so there are you have to know about the Taenia coli, Hostra, and appendices epiploica. Okay, so you can see this. This is the Taenia coli. This band of structure is called as a Taenia coli. This band of structure is called as a Taenia coli, and one segment like this is called as a Hostrum. Okay, one segment like this is called as a Hostrum. Okay, so you can see there are fat molecules here, fat pouches. These pouches can lead to diverticular disease. These pouches in the Taenia coli can lead to diverticular is like a small pouch formation where there is accumulation of fecal matter, and it can lead to abscess formation. Okay, so this in autoimmune diseases, this large intestine is and small intestine is prone for patchy inflammation. We call that as Crohn's disease. Patchy inflammation, we call it as Crohn's disease. Okay, that's a autoimmune disease. Okay, so some people will be suffering with Crohn's disease. So this is what we have to understand here. Okay, so next, when you come to the microscopic anatomy, there are more epithelial. It's also made up of columnar epithelial cells, and this mucous membrane doesn't secrete any digestive enzymes. The main role of the lateral hindgut, that is the descending colon and the anus, is to eliminate the fecal matter. Okay, but when it comes to anal canal, it leads to formation of this stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, so now I will speak a few words about the anal canal. So here what you have to understand is the external anatomy of it. So now what I can do is, I will take a female model. Okay, now if you see the anal triangle, the anus opens in the anal triangle. If you look at the muscular structure present here, okay, this is the pelvic diaphragm. This is a circular muscle. It's called as anal sphincter. Okay, this is a circular muscle that is called as anal sphincter. And you draw one imaginary line between these two ischial spine and the this is the os pubis joint, and this is the coccyx. Okay, so there is a muscle that is called as the anococcygeal ligament that is attached to the external anal sphincter and the coccyx. Okay, this is anococcygeal ligament, and this is called as a perineal body, to which these transverse perineal muscles are attached, okay. So now this is the bulbospongiosis in the female, and here is the opening of the vaginal orifice, and this is the opening of the urethral orifice, okay. So here what you see, this you can see a triangular area. This is called as an anal triangle. This triangle is called as a urogenital triangle. This triangle is called as urogenital triangle, which I will explain deep in the so this is the anal ring. This is anal ring. Here you can see lots of venous superficial veins. This you can see lots of superficial veins. The inferior mesenteric vein and the perineal vein will come and anastomose here, okay. So thereby what happens, if there is any irritation of, these are all the anal sinus, and this is the place where the internal hemorrhoids are possible. This is called as a Hilton's line. There is a line called a Hilton's line. So where there is high venous flow, there is high venous flow. So this is called as, this is a place where the blood vessel will bulge, and it leads to internal hemorrhoids, whereas this hemorrhoids prolapse out, we call it as the external hemorrhoids, okay. Suppose if there is a hole formation, and this hole leads to connection in the pelvic cavity, we call it as fistula in anus, okay. This is called as a fistula. So there are different types of piles that is taking place: internal hemorrhoids, external hemorrhoids, fistular piles, okay. So all these are due to increased venous engorgement, okay. These veins can swell if the porta hepatis is shrunk. That is also one reason. Or if the patient is having more obesity, then also there are chances for these veins to be swollen. Okay. So this is what you have to understand here. Now I will I have cleared. Okay. Now what you see is, this is the rectum. Okay. And anterior to that you have the uterine cavity and the vaginal cavity, uterus and the vagina, and anterior to that you have the bladder, okay. So if there is any cancer origin here, it can communicate to this, and abnormal fistula can be created. This is called as rectovaginal fistula. This is the connection between the bladder and the vagina is vesicovaginal fistula. Fistula means connection. Posterior to that you have the sacral plexus nerves. Okay. So coming here, these are the walls of the rectum, and these are all the hemorrhoidal veins, and these are all the pelvic floor muscles, the levator ani and coccygeus muscles, okay. Around the anal ring you have the external sphincter muscles that keeps constricting and relaxing. So what happens, whenever there is flatus, the air is present, what happens, these veins will engorge and close the passage, okay. So this is the best organ. This muscle responds according to the situation here. If there is solid stool, these these anal muscles will relax. If the fecal matter is very watery in nature, then they will go in for spasm by the filling of these veins. Okay. So you have to understand, automatically the anal ring is sensing the type of stool that is present here and works accordingly. Okay. The rectum is usually empty, but when mass movement forces fecus into the rectum, stretching of rectal wall induces defecation. The process of eliminating the fecal matter is called as defecation, okay. So there is internal sphincter and external sphincter. If defecation is delayed, the reflex ends within seconds. The rectal wall relaxes. The next mass movement indicates the reflex again. Okay, so the defecation reflex is from the brain. Okay, it is autonomic nervous system. So once there is fecal matter in the sigmoid or descending colon, then the inflammation rectal muscle starts to relax and the patient feels to have the bowel movement. Okay, this is what happens in the defecation reflex. So by this we are completing the digestive system, and we will start with the urinary system in the next topic. Okay, thank you.